Hi there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. In today's video we're going to be discussing the heart chakra and the associations of the chakra with colours. I'm seeing it more and more often recently that it's only associated, or people tend to only be associating it with the emerald green colour, and I'm not sure why. In my entire lived experience of consciously working with energy, I've never known it to be limited only to emerald green. So just a reminder though, before we go into the content, I have to do the disclaimer. Everything on the channel is based on my opinion, beliefs, or information, knowledge. Nothing I proffer is designed to replace medical, mental health, financial, legal, or other professional advice. And you would be wise to form your own opinions and do your own research on any of the content that I put up. So I do understand it can be really confusing looking at the information that people put on the internet. And even if you buy books, it's like everybody's got a different opinion. They might all call themselves teachers or whatever, but it becomes very confusing for the novice that starts exploring it, because everybody turns around and says, this is the truth, I'm right. It's kind of like it's a categoric truth. This is what I know, so therefore this is the right way for everybody. Now, in my experience, that's actually not correct. And many years ago, I did some reflection because I was becoming deeply confused as well. And in my reflections, what I was able to establish, and this might apply to you, is that there are certain things that are what we would call categorical universal truths. And that is certainly for me, my beliefs, my opinions, that we have a chakra body and there are chakras in it, and we all have auras and auric layers. But where it varies is the way people interpret what they believe about the function of the chakras and even color associations. So, what I established for myself, and it made sense, was that we are all given information, but because we're all actually humans as well as a soul walking on the planet, we interpret based on our own personal experiences. So, therefore, I deducted or deduced that there are categoric and universal truths, and then there are personal truths. And what works for one is not necessarily something that works for all. So this is why I always encourage people that I work with, find your own truth. I can give you a certain amount of information, but it's up to you to establish, does it feel right to me? And I'll give you some techniques further on in the video on how you can come to your own healthy conclusions, shall we or shall we call it. So that being said, my understandings of the heart chakra and the colour green, certainly the emerald colour, is that it is directly related to the others, or our relationship with other people. It's about forgiveness and letting go of anger. I'm not going to go into a whole discussion about forgiveness in this slide, as it's quite an extensive topic. What I do believe, and normally I would say no, because for me it's a part of my internal knowing. I know this for me. What I know to be true in my own heart is that the colour green is about forgiving others, being compassionate toward them, even if they've somehow done the unforgivable. So actually, I will touch on forgiveness here. It doesn't mean that what a person has done to us is okay and that's fine, please give me another kick in the heart. It means accepting that that person is on their own journey as well. We're all on our own journey, and refusing to allow the hurt and pain of their actions to impact and influence our present or our future in negative ways. So the emerald green is about moving forward, even at times where there's an energetic type response of, I don't understand and I don't know why this is happening or why it has happened, but I do accept that at some point in the future it will become clear to me. And this can include things such as forgiveness of family members, might be your negligent parents or a toxic family of origin with horrible relationships with brothers and sisters. It's a case of forgiving them and letting go, and understanding that it's all serving a higher purpose, and that our role on this life path is to establish what that what that purpose is for us as part of walking our divine path. I have put up the video on divine plans, so check that one out. That might help a bit. So in brief, the emerald green is about loving others and respecting that within them there is also a divine spark. The best way to explain it is that old namaste, I see your divine spark, and sometimes it might mean moving along, but peaceful moving along. And if I want to get a bit noncy with this, it could be a case of saying, peace be with you, my brother and sister, as you move off into the opposite direction and take a different path. Or there is another alternative here. Or as you navigate walking the path together, because sometimes you will stay together, but it does involve forgiving those people that are in your current relationships and navigating solutions for a positive and happy outcome for all parties. So, this is what the emerald green relates to, as I understand it and feel it to be true. The pink is actually really important as part of balancing the heart chakra, because it is with the pink that we're talking about self love and self respect. Now, my experience is I'm not particularly a pink type of person. I've always been a bit of a tomboy, and that can actually be very telling for those of us that understand energy. If we find a color to be repelling, it indicates a blockage or a barrier to healing in one of the chakras. So if people look at this bright pink and feel like they want to vomit, then I would suggest that you work with this colour, even if it's a case of wearing it and carrying it on your person until you feel comfortable with the colour, because it's this colour that refers to self forgiveness. It's about accepting that, yes, you made mistakes, and I've put up there mistake or mistake. I can't remember where that rationale with the mistake came from, but it's really good. It's about being kind to yourself and accepting, yeah, okay, if you made a mistake, that's all right. You're human and you get to choose again. You get to do as many takes as you want. You can do take one, take two, take three, however long it is that you need, or however many you need to do before you actually achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve. Now, in regard to self respect, it's about stepping up and putting in healthy boundaries and not allowing people to mistreat you anymore. Survivors of domestic violence will benefit from this colour, particularly if they've been subjected to psychological abuse. So that's the benefit of this particular shade of pink. So this shade of pink is the one that most people are drawn to, um, and not necessarily the deeper pink, and probably because the extreme healing properties of the deeper pink are not required for most people. Anyway, this hue of pink is really good for those people that struggle with low self-esteem and have very little self-confidence. I tend to find that they can be quite timid and they will allow other people to dominate them. Um, the other aspects that I've noticed about them is that they really are very sweet, very loving and kind people. But if I was to apply a physical conversation to the people that would benefit from this colour, it would be like where we're championing, if I can speak, if well, we're championing them. I think you know what I mean, and saying things like, you underestimate your own ability. Yes, you can do it. You are so much better than you clearly think you are, because they lack this self-confidence and they've got low self-esteem. And they will reply by saying things like, "Oh, no, I'm not sure. Do you really think so? That's nice, thank you, but I don't think so," right? Because they're just so very sweet and polite, and they do tend to hold themselves back from achieving their potential quite simply because they don't believe in themselves. This is where this shade is really good for the heart chakra. And then there is this color, which is related to the higher heart chakra. And ultimately, I will do a video on all the main chakras of the body. This one is overlooked quite often, I'm finding, on the internet. And the image is the closest I can get to the color that relates to how I see it. Now, back in the day when I consciously commenced my healing journey, I was not in an area where I could access teachers. So I was pretty well completely reliant on my own guidance and intuition to understand any of the clairvoyant visions I had. So the way I learned about the heart chakra, higher heart chakra, I beg your pardon, it didn't happen instantaneously. I was exposed to the colours, and it was over the passage of time that I learned about the higher heart chakra. So anyway, the best way for me to explain this is how I experienced it. And that is that I was working for some people who were very wealthy, and they had their elderly mother living with them. And basically, I was employed pretty well in the capacity of a servant, except in Australia, we don't do that. clear class distinction of going, here's the home help. But I had been employed to take on a role of caring for the child and doing a bit of light housework for the mother while she was at work. The couple were South Africans, and they had brought their elderly mother over when she'd become widowed. I need to cough just a sec. Anyway, it'd taken about 2 years for the elderly mother to arrive, and she was completely isolated, it turned out. I didn't know because obviously there's that barrier between us, employee employer type stuff. But I picked up that there was a level of sadness with the lady, and I wasn't aware of how long it had been since she lost her husband. But one day I happened to just pick up energetically that she was feeling a bit sad. And so I told her that I did healing, and I asked her consent to send her some healing. And she said yes, thankfully. So I invoked that she would receive the perfect healing for her at the divine time. And I then went on about my business around the house. I was with the child and all the rest of it. And then I was drawn to return to the area of the house where she was sitting. And when I walked into the room, all I could see was this colour, like the lady was sitting in the middle of a shower of this amazing energy that was going to her. And I actually gasped when I saw it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And she looked at me, I looked at her, and I said to her, "Oh my God, can you feel that?" And she said, "Yes, I can." I said, "Can you see it too, though?" And it turned out she could. So from there, that kind of became an icebreaker, and we talked about what was going on for her. And what was going on for her led me to understand the nature of this specific colour for healing. So I'll go on with that on the next slide. It was then that I asked the lady, or shortly afterwards, if what she was dealing with was the grief and loss of a husband. I was so naive and ignorant in hindsight. And she told me yes, it was, that she missed him every day, but she knew he was around her as she could feel his spirit. Anyway, not only was she dealing with the loss of a husband, which would have been horrendously traumatic, but because of the relocation across countries, she was also processing the loss of her entire social network, her friends, and her extended family. So while she loved her adult children and she knew that they would do the best by her, she was also feeling completely dependent on them, a burden, and she felt very disempowered. She was reliant on them for accommodation, and she was actually feeling very trapped and powerless, is the best way to explain it. And really, she realistically, actually, no, really about it, she had absolutely no autonomy or personal freedom. And it was actually quite tragic. So I just want to add a note here that her family were beautiful. They were beautiful people. And while the lady did not complain because that would be ungrateful, the family, being wealthy, were actually quite sensitive, and they did end up buying her. And I believe that it was unprompted. It was simply because they recognised the difficulties and struggles for this elderly lady. They ended up buying her a little unit just down the road from them, and then they bought her a car so that she could have some of that freedom, the independence, and the autonomy that she needed at a proximity where they could also help her. So they really were genuinely good people, the whole lot of them. Anyway, it was because of this experience that I associated the colour with healing grief and the loss of loved ones, where there is that associated feeling of being let down by the universe, like the universe has betrayed them. So my understanding of the colour association with the higher heart chakra was when I recognised the placement in the body where that healing went to. Now, if you can relate to these kinds of emotional sensations, I'd be interested in hearing your comments, especially if you decide to work with the lime green, because quite simply, the more information that we share of our own experiences, the larger the collective pool of wisdom becomes. And I think that's a great thing. Anyway, on to the next slide. Okay, before we talk about the other properties, let's take a look here at this slide, which is not a particularly great graphic. Um, I'll try and be clear about it and not confuse you, because I'm really good at confusing people apparently. But anyway, where it sits is, if you were to get your two little fingers and put them at the bottom of your cleavage, you're going to feel the bony bit. And if you put your fingers down a little further, you're going to feel the soft bit where the ribs end and it's muscle under there. So the blue arrow is not pointing in exactly the right spot. It's the heart chakras at the bottom of the cleavage. You can still feel the bony bit, maybe a finger or two above the soft bit, right? That's the heart chakra spot. If you put your fingers to the top of your chest, basically at the bottom of your throat, you've got those two little bony bits that are there, and then you've got the soft bit in the middle, right? That's where your throat chakra sits, kind of at the start of the bony bit there in that area. You don't need to be perfect anyway. I'm just trying to give you an idea. The higher heart chakra sits in between these two. Now, from a size perspective, the heart chakra is the largest one out of these three. Then the throat chakra is sitting there. That is nowhere near as big as the heart chakra. In fact, it's a fairly small one. But the higher heart chakra, which is at the top of your cleavage, remember, that is smaller than the throat chakra even. It's quite a small chakra, but it's an important chakra nonetheless. So bearing in mind we talked about the location, I managed to make the links for myself and my own understanding of the heart chakra with people who've been diagnosed with, say, PTSD and panic disorders. Now, while I obviously do recommend the use of energy for people with any conditions, actually, that's because the use of energy doesn't do any harm. But I am very clear that you should not disengage from your medical or clinical treatment plans and rely totally on energy alone. And this is because the use of energy doesn't do any harm. I'm not privy to why energy works sometimes and why it doesn't on other occasions. I have seen too many people leave this earth plane early, for want of a better word. I call it the early demise because they decided that they were not going to engage with proper medical treatment and they were just going to do it through the use of energy. Well, I cannot, as I say, I cannot explain why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But going back to this, I would say if somebody's got a diagnosis and they are being clinically treated, then you follow your doctor's guidance, right? But you can still do the energy work and you may get benefit out of it. And I'd love to hear your responses, right? So, anyway, the reasons why I've made these associations is because people with these symptoms, when they are escalated, they will quite often feel um, varying levels of discomfort in that little area above the cleavage, which I showed you in the previous slide. And that can be like a physical ache for them. It can feel like a pain. At the worst case scenario, it can feel like they're having a heart attack. And then if it goes unchecked, it will then rise up potentially. Remember, not everybody's the same. They can end up with a big lump in their throat where they feel that they can't talk and they might even be feeling like they're choking and struggling to breathe. So these are all symptoms of a panic attack or potentially PTSD. So then looking at the emotional perspective or the causes of why this becomes dysfunctional, shall we say, for want of a better word, is what I've been able to connect is there as an association with a real crisis of faith and a sense of betrayal by the universe, that they have been severely let down. Now, this can include veterans who have returned from combat who struggle to forgive themselves and make sense of the things that they did or saw, and to understand why the universe would let these things happen. You know, how the old questions of, how can there be a God when this happened and that happened and I had to do X and Y, and there's all of that. So they feel very let down and betrayed. Then on the other hand, there is the people who haven't been in combat, but they still might have a diagnosis of PTSD. Quite often it could be compounded PTSD or what's referred to as CPTSD. And this is because they've experienced systemic injustice again and again, basically been victims through no fault of their own, actually. And by this, I mean, we could use the survivors of domestic violence would be one. Um, Actually, there's any number of them. I don't want to go into it because it will take this video down a dark pathway. But they actually haven't done anything wrong. They've just been trying to survive. They might have made some faulty decisions. They might have trusted people to support them who were perhaps working in the system, human service type organisations or whatever, that are being paid to do X and Y. And then these people actually make promises they don't keep, would be a good way of describing it, and then let them down. So these people are let down in such a bad way that it impacts their sense or capacity to be able to survive. It can be very, very harmful. So going back to it, they have experienced things that are not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. They just have sucked the pointy end of the stick, for want of a better description. And they also struggle to make sense of their experiences. And they end up with a real heartache and pain and sense of betrayal and asking the universe, why? What did I do to deserve this? So yeah, universal betrayal or sense of it, because we know deep down, have a look at your divine plan. The universe does not betray us, it doesn't let us down. But when we're at a certain point, we don't understand why we're having these experiences. And this is what this chakra governs. It helps us to make sense, if you like. So, what I've shared with you today is aspects of my own personal truth, and it may or may not resonate with you. It might be that you sit there and think to yourself, oh, well, what Anna says feels right to me, but not all of it, right? There's some parts that don't sit right. Okay, that is perfectly fine and okay. What I would encourage you to do is to find your own personal truth, and that is to seek your own answers around the information that I give you. And it's not hard to do. One way of focusing intent, if you're not used to doing it, is simply to have that question in your mind and write it down on a piece of paper. I'll give you a couple of examples here. And I find, just so you know, I find clear questions get clear answers. So try and make your questions clear and short, and you may need to ask a number of questions in the same way to reach a personal conclusion. So we'll say you write a question for you to ask your higher self, all that I am, the divine, the guides, and so forth, right? You write your question down, and it could be something like, is the higher heart chakra associated with the healing colors of lime green? Or what is the healing properties of the higher heart chakra? Something like that. Once you've got your question clear, then call upon your creator, angels, and guides to provide you the answers. You then set about getting yourself into that relaxed state of breathing, when you're not going to be interrupted. You don't have to give it a long time. You can just do 5 or 10 minutes. You're focusing the intent and stating to the universe that you're open to receiving the answers, right, based on truth. Okay. So then you just sit there, you focus on your breath. I've got the sacred breath tutorial up there. You can call it box breathing, whatever works for you. Breathe in the color white in this instance, the white like the pearl, or there's another option if it's easy for you. Breathe in the color gold like the sun, the yellowy, goldy color. Whatever color is easy for you to breathe, and hold while you're doing that breath count. As I say, do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time. Now, depending on your own abilities to receive information, you might actually get the answers come directly to you while you're in this breathing state. And don't try and force anything. That's the other thing. Just let it happen, right? For other people, it might be that nothing happens. They get up and they think, well, that was great. I asked the questions and, nobody took the time to answer me. That's not necessarily correct. Just go on your way, do what you've got to do, and you can be going about your business, doing what you've got to do, and then all of a sudden you'll get the bing light bulb moment, and that is what is referred to as the divine idea. It pings into your head, right? And it will have your answer for you. So you just put it out there, make the statement, you're receptive to receiving your answers, and then you just carry on. And don't forget to say thank you to the universe. Anyway, once you've done it a couple of times, let me know how it goes. I'm interested always. So apparently I don't know how to do a short video, or I struggle to do that. So my apologies. I do recommend, if it's a bit slow for you and if you can cope with the voice and the accent, use your settings on the video to speed it up, because that works for me. But anyway, in conclusion, besides thank you for viewing, just a reminder that when you're doing your chakra balancing exercises, please do always work on both the green and the pink. Use the shade of pink that you feel is appropriate to you. You might want to use both the color pinks. It's up to you. It's all about your comfort levels. Feel free, I invite you to leave comments if you're comfortable to do so. If you're one of those beautiful people that would like to reciprocate as a means of acknowledging the time that I've put into developing my craft to the point where I can actually share information, or the time that I put into creating these videos, because they are a bit of a stress sometimes. I do have a donation button on my website. I think I'll change the name of it to a tip jar, actually. All donations are appreciated and received with gratitude. Thank you very much. And I shall now move on to creating another video on the brow chakra, which is very important for people that are getting out. Everyone seems to romanticize the brow chakra. You know, hey, I want to see spirit. I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Um, it just, yeah, I need to do a video on that to help people make sense of it. But anyway, in the meantime, I shall leave you to have a wonderful day. Have a blessed day, night, my friends. Thank you for being part of my journey. Thank you for viewing. Take care. Bye bye.